First up is Memoir of a Snail, which is a new stop-motion animated film, and I didn't know anything about it going into it, aside from that I'd heard good things, and this film is heavy. There are times where it's super bleak, like it is emotionally charged. And I can't say for sure, but I think if you had told this through the medium of live action, it would have been so depressing, and I don't think you would have been able to ingest it. But because it has these really appealing, cute stop motion characters, and they're not cute necessarily in like a saccharine way, but they do have a charm to them, I think it really helps make the story, I don't want to say palatable, but palatable, like digestible, you know? I think it helps soften some of the edges of the material, which can be really sharp and, again, a real bummer. So it's a memoir told through the lens of a character called Grace, so not an actual snail, although she goes through enough misfortune in her life that she wants to, you know, recoil into her metaphorical shell, and I would not blame her based on all the things that you witness, and boy howdy, do you witness them in stop motion glory? And, you know, again, I give them massive credit. From a technical perspective, it's very well done. There's this distinct visual style to these characters that I don't want to call it Burton-esque, but it does give me a little bit of a tiny bit Tim Burton vibe. It feels more of like a Henry Selick Tim Burton vibe than, say, an Aardman vibe, which is like a Wallace and Gromit. So, you know, keep that in mind. And again, it's an odd one to recommend. I'm like, do you want to be pretty bummed out, but also go on an emotional journey? Memoir of a Snail, it's there for you. If you are not feeling in a great place right now, I don't know if you necessarily would have the emotional bandwidth to handle this because, like I said, it's a real bummer, and I keep bringing it up because, again, I was not prepared for that. And so by the time I realized what the journey I was going to go on was, it was too late to, you know, for lack of a better word, back out. But I think this is one of those great films that helps exemplify the idea that animation is a medium. It is not a genre, because this is a film for grown-ups, for adults. I would not show this to children. It tackles mature topics, and it being told through stop motion and animation does really help enhance the story itself. And so I look to this as a great example of a film that helps support that idea. So again, this is an odd one to recommend, but I do think if you want some sort of catharsis or need an emotional purge, this certainly falls into that category. Do not be lulled into a sense of this is for everyone because it is animation, because I would not show this to young children just because I don't think they have the, complexity yet to deal with some of the topics that are being covered here. I think material-wise and what it's covering, it's not my favorite genre of it, but I think because of the way that it was enhanced through animation, like, this definitely gets a bump in my book, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. The other film I have this week is also an animated film. It is called Hitpig, and much like Memoir of a Snail, I knew nothing about it going into it, and this one, I had heard nothing about it going into it, so really, and I watched them back to back. I did watch this before I watched Memoir of a Snail. I don't know if that was the right direction to do this in. I highly doubt anybody else will be watching them back to back, so don't worry about that part, but Hitpig is about a pig who is a bounty hunter. This is apparently based on a children's book called Pete and Pickles, and I've never read it. I've never heard of it. Totally fine, you know. But I definitely feel that this is one of those movies where I don't know if they bothered to adapt it. And the whole thing about adapting a children's book is like, you do actually have to adapt it for the format of a feature-length film. And so there were a lot of points, this is in particularly regards to the dialogue, that I was like, this doesn't make sense for the scenario that you have set up, and yet somehow this, you know, effectively like monologue is happening. So Hitpig is about a bounty hunter pig, and he goes about and is usually recapturing escaped pets and animals and things like that. And he is voiced by Jason Sudeikis. He then encounters an elephant voiced by Lily Singh, who is living in terrible conditions and works at a circus. She's being, I guess, held captive effectively by a character played by Rainn Wilson. Again, this is all utterly absurd, but sure, we're going with it. And then you've got like RuPaul as a radioactive polecat. You've got Hannah Gadsby as a koala, which actually makes sense. You've got Flavor Flav is in this at some point. I was just like, what is happening here? But I think the thing that really kind of irked me about this film is that, one, it was over the top zany, and also just like constant berating with puns and jokes, and I love a good pun. But at the same time, I was like, I don't think this does not make up for the plot or a lack of emotional arc or all these things. And then, of course, but then, because they are also trying to appeal to a younger audience, there's an aggressive amount of zaniness, and they do not know how to calibrate between the two. So it's just a constant barrage of either unnecessary or like action that doesn't motivate the story, and then dialogue that is just a what? So that already frustrating. But the thing that irked me is that the rules in this universe that they have established made no sense. And I know this is an odd thing to get hung up about, but something like Memoir of a Snail establishes rules and it makes sense and it is doing a great job. And there are plenty of other examples of animated films out there that do an amazing job. This one, I'm like, can the people understand the animals? Because in some cases, it seems like they can. And then in some cases, they have to like mime at them or like it doesn't make any sense. And then other times, the animals don't understand each other. I'm like, what is going on here? And I'm getting very worked up about this for no reason. This is certainly more than I think this film deserves. I do not know what was happening plot-wise. It did not make any sense. The rules also around the weight and physics of the animals made no sense. Like, if you have an elephant as your main character, and it's a normal elephant, it's not like a Dumbo elephant, and oh my gosh, do they love making references to other pop culture things. There are so many superhero references and, like, Dumbo references. I'm just like, who is this for? I think they're trying to like, you know, say to the adults, like, please keep awake during this because we know you're watching this because you have a kid. But, you know, I was like, who is the audience? But yeah, like, if you have an elephant as your protagonist or one of your protagonists effectively, and you're treating it like a regular elephant, please give it the weight of an elephant. And if it is doing things in the air, you know, it's heavy. It shouldn't be able to do some of these things. Again, it's just a lack of consistency, and I'm like, this is really annoying. The animation is fine. It's whatever. You know, they're clearly going for a very cartoony style, and I think the lack of subtlety in this film is, like I touched upon, one of the things that I'm like, this makes this really hard to watch if you're an adult especially. Like, and I don't want to, you know, suggest that kids do not have refined taste. It's not going to be like the favorite of everyone. You know, I think we are in this time of year where it is challenging to find things to watch for the whole family, but this does not go on a recommendation list for me, unfortunately. I think it's not that great. I'm gonna give it a 2.7 out of 5, and I actually am probably being generous, but it's not the worst thing I've seen. But I also was just like, I don't want to follow this story because aside from the circumstances of like animal cruelty, I'm not invested in any of these characters. So, you know, whatever. So yeah, 2.7 out of 5 for Hitpig.